Mr. Thompson was very surprised the first time he saw Whiskers. The cat was determined to get something from his store as he pawed at the door, trying to get in. It had a leaf in its mouth, hoping it could trade it for fish, and Mr. Thompson was glad to play along. It became their daily ritual until Mr. Thompson did something no one expected. Everyone in the town knew about Whiskers and Mr. Thompson. They all figured he would adopt the cat one day, but Mr. Thompson had a whole other idea for the cat, and it was unexpected to say the least. One morning, his customers surrounded his store, confusedly looking at what Mr. Thompson was doing. Many townspeople were confused and didn't know what to think about it. It was clear Mr. Thompson's store was closed for the day, as he was very busy with something else. The cat sat on the curb, watching along and eating a piece of tuna as Mr. Thompson finished his plan. As soon as Mr. Thompson was done, the townspeople gasped. Now everything fell into place, and suddenly they were very impressed with what Mr. Thompson had done. None of them had seen this coming. But what was Mr. Thompson doing? Why didn't he just adopt the cat? And how did the cat bring a leaf to get fish? It was a bright and sunny day when Mr. Thompson opened his store. It was a Saturday, so he expected many customers. He prepped everything for their arrival, placing all the fish neatly on display and turning the temperature down enough to keep them as fresh as possible. He wanted only the best for his customers. As he turned the open and close sign to open, he saw something strutting his way. It was a little brown cat with stripes like a tiger. The sun beamed on its fur, and Mr. Thompson could almost feel how soft it must be. He watched the cat determinedly strutting his way. It looked like the cat knew exactly where it was headed. It walked in a straight line to Mr. Thompson's store and stopped right in front of the door. Mr. Thompson frowned and crouched down, looking at the cat through the window. To his confusion, he noticed the cat held a leaf in its mouth. "What do you have there, buddy?" Mr. Thompson looked intently at the cat. "Why would it bring a leaf to his store?" he observed as the cat scratched the door. It clearly wanted to be let in, but Mr. Thompson didn't know how to feel about that. A cat in a fish store? That could easily go the wrong way. He decided to bring the cat a small piece of tuna. As Mr. Thompson opened the door with the plate in his hand, the cat watched his every move. Then, before Mr. Thompson could set the plate down, the cat lay the leaf by his feet. It sat down again and gave one small, high-pitched meow. Mr. Thompson chuckled and placed the plate on the ground. The cat happily ate everything and even licked the plate clean. Then the cat left again, and Mr. Thompson began his day with a smile. Since that day, the cat has come by daily, bringing a new leaf each time. It became their ritual, and Mr. Thompson named the cat Whiskers. Whiskers became the town's favourite street cat. Wherever he went, he was always greeted with love and kindness. Mr. Thompson figured the cat used the leaves as a kind of trading strategy. He possibly watched Mr. Thompson's customers give him money in exchange for fish. Every morning, Mr. Thompson waited for Whiskers to come by. It usually was around the same time he opened the store, probably because there were no other customers yet. He had noticed Whiskers being a bit shy around people, but not around Mr. Thompson, probably because Mr. Thompson fed him every morning. But this morning, Whiskers failed to show up. Mr. Thompson waited all morning and even placed the plate of tuna on the ground in the hope that the smell would attract Whiskers, but there was no sign of him. Mr. Thompson thought about poor Whiskers all day long. Could something have happened? Living on the street could be dangerous for cats, and other animals for that matter, but everyone in this town knew who Whiskers was. They all recognized him on the streets and would never hurt him, would they? Mr. Thompson decided to leave it for the night, hoping he would see Whiskers again tomorrow. But the next morning came, and Whiskers was still nowhere to be seen. Now, Mr. Thompson really began to worry. It wasn't like Whiskers to skip breakfast, and definitely not 2 mornings in a row. Where could the little guy be? Mr. Thompson had to find out. That evening, Mr. Thompson closed his shop a little early so he could search the streets while it was still light out. He searched in almost every bush, underneath many cars, and even inside a few trash cans, but all without luck. As it was getting darker, he went back to his shop to grab his coat and go home. Mr. Thompson's heart skipped a beat as he walked towards his shop and saw a little dark shadow sitting in front of his door. It was Whiskers. "Hey, little buddy, where were you today?" he asked the cat, knowing it would never answer. Whiskers meowed back and rubbed its head against Mr. Thompson's leg. Mr. Thompson wanted to open his store and give Whiskers a little treat, but suddenly the cat bit into his jeans and pulled him away. "Ah," Mr. Thompson said as he gently pulled his leg back. "What are you doing?" But Whiskers was determined and bit Mr. Thompson's jeans again. Whiskers pulled on his jeans again, and Mr. Thompson almost fell to the ground. "What do you want, Whiskers?" he asked confusedly. Whiskers now walked away from Mr. Thompson, but stopped and stared back at him. That's when it clicked. He wanted Mr. Thompson to follow him. "What a smart cat you are," Mr. Thompson proudly said. First, he figured out he had to bring a leaf in order to get tuna, and now he knows how to let Mr. Thompson know he wants him to follow. It was almost hard to believe a cat would act this way, but Mr. Thompson was sure Whiskers knew exactly what he was doing. So, without hesitation, Mr. Thompson followed Whiskers. Maybe he was going to show him what he'd been up to all day long. Whiskers walked through the town from north to south and paused at the edge. They were about to leave town and go into the forest surrounding it. Whiskers looked up at Mr. Thompson and meowed at him. "It's all right, Whiskers. You can show me," Mr. Thompson said, hoping Whiskers would understand his kind tone. He wanted Whiskers to know he could be trusted, and it worked. Whiskers quickly walked into the forest with Mr. Thompson close behind him. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson thought of something. He wished he had brought a few pieces of fish with him so he could give it to Whiskers later. It was too late to turn around now, so he just hoped this wouldn't be the last time he would see Whiskers. As they walked deeper into the forest, Mr. Thompson became more and more worried. It was now pitch black outside, and he had to use his mobile flashlight to see where he was walking. He had already tripped over multiple roots and almost lost sight of Whiskers once. Mr. Thompson had never been this deep into the forest before and had no way of knowing how to get back to his village. He was relying on Whiskers to take him back, which, now that he thought of it, wasn't his best move. How will he know if a cat will guide him back? Now that Mr. Thompson thought about it, this whole situation was absurd. Who in the world would blindly follow a cat into a forest, only because that said cat ate at his fish shop every day? He suddenly began to doubt his actions and hoped they would soon arrive at the place Whiskers wanted to show him. As Mr. Thompson stumbled through the forest, trying to keep up with Whiskers, he suddenly saw a faint glow ahead. His doubts melted away as he focused on the soft, flickering light. Whiskers paused, turned back to him, and meowed, urging him forward. The glow grew brighter as they reached a small clearing. To Mr. Thompson's astonishment, he found a hollowed-out tree stump filled with soft leaves, scraps of cloth, and feathers. Whiskers' home. Inside the makeshift nest, 3 tiny kittens snuggled together, their fur blending into the bedding. "Oh, Whiskers, is this what you've been hiding?" Mr. Thompson whispered, kneeling by the stump. Whiskers leapt into the hollow, curling protectively around the kittens, purring loudly. The realization hit Mr. Thompson. Whiskers hadn't been eating for himself all this time. He had been trading those leaves to gather food for his family. Every leaf, every meow, every visit had been Whiskers' way of providing for his kittens. Mr. Thompson's heart swelled with admiration and a twinge of guilt for ever doubting the clever cat. "You're an amazing father, Whiskers," he said softly, "but you can't keep doing this alone." Without hesitation, Mr. Thompson gently scooped up Whiskers and his kittens, bundling them in his coat. Whiskers didn't resist. He seemed to understand this was for the best. Together, they made their way back to the village, the glow of the moon guiding their steps. The next morning, the townspeople gathered in awe at Mr. Thompson's store. A new sign on the door read, "Closed for family business. Meet Whiskers and his kittens tomorrow." Inside, Mr. Thompson had set up a cozy corner with a bed, toys, and enough fish for Whiskers and his little ones. From that day on, the store became more than just a place to buy fish. It became a symbol of kindness and community. And Whiskers? He was no longer just a clever street cat, but the proud mascot of the town, with his kittens bringing joy to everyone who met them.